Got a flag already. I'm not sure what it is about. We'll find out what they tell us. Huh. Okay. They tell us we got too many guys in the huddle. We'll decline that because this is what we want is a bunch of guys in this huddle. Thanks for coming, everybody. Appreciate you. This time, I'm going to have Coach Watson come up. Lead us in a team prayer, please. Coach Watson.
They chose me because it'd be short and simple, okay? Bow your heads, please. Our gracious Heavenly Father, we just thank you so much for this opportunity to get together with all the fellow players and coaches and friends. We just lift it up that for safe travel here and back and just all the good stuff that we went through the years, Lord. We just praise you and thank you for being there. In Jesus' name, amen. Now, since I'm here, I get to talk a little bit, okay? That I'm originally from Washington High School, Kansas City, Kansas, and it was a long ways down to Pittsburgh when I started here. But there's a coach that came to our school named John Levra. Most of you probably are familiar with John, and he sort of directed me down here to KSC at that time, okay? And so that's how I got here and got in to play a little ball and this and that and whatever. So I appreciate John. And then I did a little football, did a little baseball. And when I was like 4 years into school, that I got to, Al Ortolani was a baseball coach. And he wanted me to help coach a summer league. And so I did that, and I got to know a guy named Larry Garman because his son was playing on that team, okay? So I got introduced there. Then that fall, I did student teaching, and guess who was? Larry Garman again, okay? So I really got to know him then and appreciate it and all that stuff. But then after I was graduating in the spring, that he sent me to the board office and say, go talk to this guy named Don Bevins and you'll get a job. So I walked in the door and the superintendent said, you're hired. And so I appreciate that. And that had to do with Larry, I'm sure. Okay. And so 29, 30 years later that I got to follow Larry around. Super job. Okay. So that's, and the other thing is, I'm glad you got name tags because I can't remember all the names, but Larry can, I guarantee you, okay? So appreciate it, Coach. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, thought this would be appropriate here, about right in here, that we're going to have try to remember all the fellows we've lost, fellows that are no longer with us. So if you could bow your heads for just a minute and a moment of silence for what we'll call the huddle in heaven. Thank you. Got a couple things going on here today that aren't in this program, but very important to us that we do this today. So we got a special guest, a couple of them. The first one is B.J. Harris. B.J. is the executive director of the Kansas Shrine Bowl. And B.J. has an announcement for us. B.J., come forward, please.
I'll be honest, as a Girard Trojan, I'm a little intimidated when I walk through the door and saw all that purple. So if you'll forgive me, I'm on behalf of the Kansas Shrine Bowl today, so hopefully that ingratiates me just a little bit into this gathering. Pittsburgh High School has a long tradition with the Kansas Shrine Bowl that some of you may not even be aware of. Before I kind of get into some of that, I would like to take an opportunity. I know there's probably a few of you guys in here that played in our game. Pittsburgh High School is third all time in the number of guys who have played in the Kansas Shrine Bowl. So if you played in our game, I'd like to recognize you at this time, or coached. Stay standing because we're getting ready to do a fundraiser real quick for the Kansas Shrine Bowl. We are, though, and we are going to be reconnecting with our alumni. So those guys who stood up and your families, those guys as wives, be on the lookout for some information about some alumni stuff. We're heading into the 50th Kansas Shrine Bowl coming up this summer. And if you know anything about events and you know anything about small nonprofits, to be able to go on and do something for 50 years and make the impact we've made on children across the country, and especially here in the state of Kansas, we've raised nearly $4 million for Shriners Children's, and it's because of the game of football that we've been able to do that. And making that connection and then see it come to fruition with those guys who stood up. But an interesting story that I got told, shockingly, not long after I took the job from the Kansas Shrine Bowl from Coach Garman, was about how it came to fruition. Not only has Pittsburgh High put nearly more players in the game than any, but the guy that helped you guys get there was at the table when the Kansas Shrine Bowl was formed and met with the potentates of the 5 shrines. And Coach Garman was a consultant for all purposes, I guess, to talk about what the football aspect of our fundraising should be. And since that point, over 3,300 high school athletes have had that opportunity to go on and showcase their talent for something beyond themselves, which I think is a great testament to Coach Garman. And so heading into our 50th year, I kind of had an idea in my head, and when I see this event coming, we couldn't miss the opportunity. So at this time, on behalf of the Kansas Shrine Bowl Board of Directors and Shrine patients all around the country and the world who have benefited from our event, I'd like to formally induct Larry Garman into the Kansas Shrine Bowl Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Another Hall of Fame. Now we also have another guest. It's Chuck Munsell is the one of the city commissioners of Pittsburgh, and Chuck, I think, was one of the managers on the 1972 Pittsburgh High football team. So Chuck has another message from us from the city of Pittsburgh. Chuck?
Thank you, Donnie. I want to share with you a little funny story about how I become a student manager for Larry Garman. Back about 1970, I was playing freshman football. I wanted to play football for Larry Garman. I was about 98 pounds, and I was a backup quarterback. And, you know, when I was growing up, I used to hear this all the time. Someday, somebody's going to knock some sense in that boy. And you know what? It happened. It happened right there at practice. And if you guys know anybody named Rex Garner or Nick Cheney, they did it. They knocked some sense into my head, and it made me think, I don't want to be no football player. But because of Larry, I was able to be a student manager, and thank you for the opportunity to be a small part of the football team, Larry. So, before I go any further, I know we're here to recognize Larry, but I also want to recognize Karen, Rhonda, Greg, and Julie for allowing us to share Larry with us. I know he spent a lot of time away from home, and he molded a lot of us, so thank you very much. All right, getting back to business here. This is from the office of the mayor of the city of Pittsburgh. It's a proclamation. Whereas Coach Garman and his wife Karen have lived in Pittsburgh for more than 64 years, where he attended Pittsburgh State University, earning a Bachelor of Science degree in education and a master's degree in school administration. And whereas Coach Garman has recently completed his 60th year of coaching football in Pittsburgh, Kansas, by coaching 36 years at Pittsburgh High School and 24 years in Pittsburgh State University. Whereas Coach Garman was one of the most successful high school football coaches in Kansas State history, compiling an amazing record of 255 wins, 84 losses, and 5 ties, where he led Pittsburgh High School to 3 state championships, a state record 21 playoff appearances, and 31 winning seasons. And whereas Coach Garman, as part of Pitt State's coaching staff, has contributed to another outstanding record, 215 wins, 75 losses for the Grillets, while winning 1 national championship and numerous conference championships. Whereas Coach Garman has coached thousands of athletes through many impressive seasons, his most important contribution, as noted by many, is the positive impact he has had on, and continues to have on his players and the outstanding citizens they have become. Now, therefore, I, Chuck Mansell, City Commissioner for the City of Pittsburgh, Kansas, along with Mayor Ron Sigley, MD, and my fellow city commissioners, do hereby proclaim Saturday, February 24th, 2023 as Coach Larry Garman Day in Pittsburgh. Thank you all.
Okay, now, as you all came in today, you've seen the stuff we have up front. There's a scholarship's going to be named for Coach Garman, and all the information is up front there. You can do it online. You can do some here today, whatever. So if you would like to do something with that, it would be appreciated. I know there's always a young man at Pittsburgh High that could probably use a little bit of help as they leave high school, and we'd like to do that in Coach's honor. The other thing is the Jocks Niche has a bunch of apparel up front here, and if you buy something from those guys, some of that may go to scholarship, some of it may go to the Pittsburgh High football team, and you know how budgets are these days. I'm sure they could use a little extra help. So if you want to purchase something back there from the Jocks Niche, some of that will go to either the team or to the scholarship. Also, in the back today, we have a room back here that's a video room. If you want to go back in there and do a little video and tell Coach Garman something, or if there's a group of you, or it's a pretty good sized room, make sure to go back in there and do that, because we're going to give this to Coach when we're done, and I'm sure he'll get a big laugh out of listening to some of these boys that go back there and talk. So take advantage of that today. Go back there. If you got something to say to Coach, go in there. It's in the back here, and we will do a little video for you, okay? Okay. Well, little pep talk. You don't get to talk, though, bud. You got to listen. We've listened to yours after winning a lot of games after we heard those pep talks, too. But, Coach, 1965, a long time ago. A long time ago. I don't know if you probably ever thought about one day you'd be a mentor. I don't know if you ever thought about that. Probably, I doubt if you did. And you probably don't think that today. But you definitely were. And I'm going to read the definition of a mentor to you. A mentor is a person who can support, advise, and guide you. They typically take the time to get to know you, the challenges you're facing, and then use their understanding and personal experience to help you improve. Mentors have the potential to become a lifelong friend. I think you fit that, bud. Now I got these visions in my head. 1965, I'm a 9-year-old kid in Pittsburgh, Kansas, but I don't think you're really thinking about being a mentor. I think you were thinking about providing for the family. Your lovely wife, Karen, still with us. Rhonda, Greg, and Julie. And like I said, I don't think you were thinking about being a mentor. I think you were thinking about taking care of those people. So Martin Rohde, I think, hires you in 1965. There's a new sheriff in town, fellas. He's the football coach, Larry Garman. Whew. So it all starts kind of from right there, Coach. You got your seniors, and all of us out here, all these players, they all know. When you're a senior, we need some leaders, guys. We got to have some leaders out of senior class. And we got our juniors. Some of you juniors are going to have to step up because we're going to need some help. You're going to have to perform a little bit for us. Then we got the sophomores. These guys been down in junior high, down at Roosevelt and Lakeside, and they're going to come up. And we got a few guys from College High there after the College High got shut down. So we bring them up. So this thing starts to circle like this every year. Every year. We're going to lose a lot of seniors. Well, I don't know. Coach, we're going to be any good? I don't know, but we're losing a lot of good players. But we got some good players still coming. So those seniors leave, and now you juniors, you're going to have to step up and be leaders, fellas. You're going to be a senior. We got to have leaders on this football team. You sophomores are going to be juniors. So you're going to have to fill in spots. We're going to have you because we got these sophomores coming up, and they're still wet behind the ears. Maybe a couple of them can play, but they're knuckleheads. We don't know. We'll see. Maybe have a couple of them. So you're still mentoring. You're mentoring those seniors and juniors, and now we're starting to mentor those sophomores, to get them ready for this program. And this goes on. You just keep, you know the drill. It just keeps going on. Seniors move out, and then after a few years, some of these guys they're gone. I mean, they're away from the program, and they're out, and they got jobs, and they've become dads and husbands, and, I'm sure there's a few grandfathers and maybe some great-grandfathers in here today with us too. But that thing just went on like that. It just kept going for 33 years. That's a lot of players, man. That's a lot of players in 33 years that went through that. So, just like I said, I don't think, Coach, that you probably thought you were a mentor or never. I don't know that you didn't think that. You just never thought about that as that. But I promise you, this room does. Everybody in here that played for Coach, stand up. Whether you're a track athlete or all the players, please stand. Every one of you. Whether you're a manager, whatever. And I know we got some Pitt State guys in here too, so you guys can stand right with us. I don't know where you're at, but stand up. Look, Coach, look at all these guys. Look at these guys. You were a mentor to all of us, to every one of us. We've moved on, and I'm sure we mentor some of our children or grandchildren the same way. Use some of the same things that you said. That we're going to win, fellas. We're going to be winners. We may not win every time, but we're going to give it a dang hard try, and we're going to be winners. And you don't have to like losing, because if you start liking losing, you might be a loser. And that stayed with me for a long time. None of us want to be losers, and I don't believe anybody in here is. So I want to go back to that mentor definition, and I want to read the last line of it. And it says, mentors have the potential to become a lifelong friend. Isn't that something? And I just want to say to you, Coach, and all of us, every one of those guys that stood, thank you, because that's definitely true. We're all lifelong friends. May God bless you and your family, Coach. Thank you. We love you. This guy I'm going to introduce here, he's no stranger to Pittsburgh High School, I'm going to tell you that. He's a 1970 graduate, a 3-sport letterman, cross country, track and basketball. Didn't play on the football team. But other than Coach Garman, he probably did watch more football games than anybody at Pittsburgh High School. He was the voice of the Purple Dragons for 25 years. He was the voice of the Pitt State Gorillas for 20 years. He knows most people in this room. Some of you guys, I promise you, he called your name as a Purple Dragon, and he called your name as a Pittsburgh State Gorilla. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Mr. Give 'em 6, Tom Manaway. Tommy.
Thank you, Donnie. Coach, if I'd played football for you, you wouldn't win 255 games. Last time I saw Don Free out on the football field, 1973, running that option, handed off, Dennis Sumter, Rudy Polopic, Jeff Goebel. We knew he wasn't throwing the ball, Coach. You're out of the wishbone set. Man, how cool is this? The Plaster Center. The first time I emceed a Pitt State event back in the day. We were downtown, second floor, above a bar, all the Diet Pepsi and pizza you can eat, and the coach was 30 minutes late and said, "Why didn't you start without me?" He didn't return the next year, by the way. So it's great to be back, and it's my pleasure and privilege to be here. I grew up here. I went to Pittsburgh High, began my broadcasting career here, and as Don said, 25 years at Pittsburgh High, 20 at Pittsburgh State. This is just the fourth time in 19 years that I've actually been back. I'm back for a couple of days this time. And like everybody else in this room, I wanted to be here today. I'm one of the Furman University football and basketball guys, and they've got a game today downtown at the Bon Secours Wellness Center in Greenville. Seats about 16,000. It's a huge day. It's a big rival against Wofford. And when they called and asked me to do this, I went to them and said, I need to go back. And Furman University said, I was going to come back anyway, Coach, but Furman said and understood the importance of the day and what it meant to you and what it meant to the Pittsburgh community. So one of the major reasons that I'm able to get back here today, I've got to be in Lexington, Virginia for a game against VMI on Wednesday. So those that made it possible for me to get back here today, I appreciate that, so I could be here for this. This event has been in the making for about 5 months. I get a call in October from Don Free, and I know these guys don't want to shout out, but I'm going to do it anyway. Rick Webb, Rex Garner, Jeff Goebel, they made this happen today, and Brad Wells as well, who's coming up here. Good, moving down, there we go. So, and Brad made it happen today here at Pittsburgh State as well. So it doesn't happen, and it just didn't happen overnight. And you can see how it turned out here so far today. I get a call in September from the 620 area code. I go, man, who is that? That's Pittsburgh, Kansas. Now that can be good or bad, you know, depending on the circumstances. What does somebody want? They leave a voicemail for me, and it says, "Hey, Vern." I go, man, it's got to be one of 3 people because there's nobody that calls me that. When I was in high school at Pittsburgh High, University of Kansas had a basketball player. His name was Vernon Vanoy. He was 6'8", 245. He was a pretty good basketball player. I played basketball at Pittsburgh High. I'm not 6'8". I'm not 245. And I wasn't very good. You know that when your grade point average is higher than your scoring average. And I was not a Rhodes Scholar. So Donnie told me what he had planned for Coach Garman, and at that point, I'm all in. I wanted to be here to be part of this today. Now, my wife, Jolene, that's with an I, and I don't know, the song Jolene. She asked me, how are you going to do this today? I said, I'm good, man. I'm going to ad-lib it. I've done this before. I know what I'm doing. She said, you can't do it. I said, what do you mean I can't do it? I know what I'm doing. You've only got 4 hours, and you've got 27 pages worth of information here on Pittsburgh High and Pittsburgh State. She had a good point. She knew that I'd probably go down some rabbit holes, football-wise, and talk a lot of stories, start talking about how Dan Wheeler intercepted a pass in 1970 to Topeka West, and he took it the distance for a touchdown. He could have lateral to his brother Ken, or he could have given it to Jay Sperry or Jim Goebel and Jeff Goebel, Jim Goebel, and also somebody else along the line. That was a huge game, 1970, in Pittsburgh High School football history. So I got a script here today. So I'm going to try to roll through it and not keep you here forever, but we'll take you down some paths as well. It's here today. The other thing as we get going is I appreciate whoever did this program putting that in there, because that's 32 years ago and a little bit different than I do today. So we got a lot to do here today. We're going to relive some alleged glory days. We're also going to hear from Mark Bollinger, Matt McLeod, Drew Rhodes. Take a break. We'll have a Garman family perspective from Rhonda, hear from Coach Garman as well. We're also back at 20 years of Pittsburgh State, and you can look over there, 61, 91 championships there. I was very fortunate to be here when they had the tremendous success during 1990 through 2004. I do want to recognize Coach Garman as well, and Karen as well today. And I'm sure, Karen, you could write the definitive book about the wife of being a head football coach, and it would probably be about as long as War and Peace, but probably a lot more entertaining, I think, than that. Rhonda's here, Julie's here, and son Greg as well. Also wanted to introduce my family who came back. We don't get back very often, but Jolene is here today. Jackie and Jamie, the Van Hoy girls. I told you guys I used to broadcast here in Pittsburgh. They're glad to be here today because they get to miss a couple days of school. So from a parenting standpoint, that's probably not pretty good. But in the South, I live in Greenville, South Carolina now, they're known as VH1 and VH2. Coach Garman knows all about VH1 and VH2 tapes from back in the days when you had to make those film exchange in gas stations all across the southeast part of the state to get ready for the next day. Judy is here with us today, my sister as well, and her family, Pastor Donnie Talent and wife Shannon. We're thankful that they are here today. I want to take you back through Coach Garman's background a little bit here. We heard it a moment ago, but I think it's worth repeating. I mean, 60 years, 3 years assistant at Pittsburgh High, 33 years, 4 decades, 65 through 98, 24 years on staff at Pitt State in various capacities. But the most amazing thing to me of all, Coach, and I've done this for X number of decades myself, you never moved. That is absolutely unbelievable from a coaching standpoint, having been around the country a lot. Sam Pittman, University of Arkansas, Pitt State All-American, 1983. He's moved 19 times. Willie Fritz, Tulane, beat Southern California, came back, one of the greatest comebacks of all time this year, 46-45. He's moved 12 times. Jerry Kill, who was here, he's moved 14. So that's a remarkable performance and the opportunity to stay here that many years. 255, 84, and 5, we know all about that. 30 winning season, 21 playoff appearances, 3 state championships. 344 games as Pittsburgh High head coach, 27 as assistant, 170 games with Pittsburgh State. 541 total games. You beat me, Coach. 25 years broadcasting Pittsburgh High, 19 when you were head coach, about 250 games, give or take one or the other. 20 years at Pitt State. I know that's exactly 223. So I've got 473. So between us, and this is where it gets tricky here, because many of us in the room were from here. USD 250 math coming into play here. 473 and 541. Between you and me, 1,014 Pittsburgh High and Pittsburgh State games. I'm not sure if that's good or bad, though. I missed one game in 20 years at Pitt State, and that was 1990. It was the first round, Division II playoff. It took on Northeast Missouri. Pitt State won it 59-3, and I missed it because Pittsburgh High was playing Bueller in the state championship game at Kansas State that day and won 28-10. I felt like I'm a Pittsburgh guy. I needed to be there. I went to Pittsburgh High, so I opted to do that one. Plus, I knew they would win anyway because they'd beaten them 64-30 earlier this year. Pitt State grad, 62, master's degree, 65, and we won't hold it against you from Missouri, from Seneca, Missouri. Now 3 Halls of Fame after today. 2001 Kansas Sports Hall of Fame, 2012 Pitt State Athletics Hall of Fame for meritorious achievement, and the Kansas Shrine Bowl Hall of Fame as well. Coach and I go way back, 1967. He and Tom Bryant came to Lakeside Junior High School, and he asked us, both of them, Coach Bryant was a basketball coach, do you guys want to play for Pittsburgh High? If you grow up in this town, most part you do. Yeah, we want to play. We want to play. Well, then he told us how it was going to be. And Donnie Free kind of told you how it was going to be. This is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to get successful. Our next meeting came during the summer of 1967. So what does every 15-year-old kid do in the summer of their sophomore year? They take driver's ed, right? Coach Garman was much more than a football coach. He affected the lives of many youngsters here in Pittsburgh outside of football. He threatened to take us to 4th and Broadway at 3 o'clock, turn left. We were scared to death, right? Try turning there now, right? That'd be more difficult now. He taught us to parallel park behind the stadium. I ran over some cones. He said, I killed some people. I said, I didn't do anything. I ran over some orange cones. My dad's got insurance. But he also taught us to drive a stick shift. Some of us remember what a stick shift is. My neck still hurting from that, Coach. Then the coup de grace. It was the swimming pool driver change. He wanted to see what his boys were doing because they're all at the swimming pool. And you're sitting there going, please, Coach, no, don't do that. Because if it's not one of these things now where you have I'm a terrific kid and, student driver, call 1-800 whatever, drive safely or something like that. They had this sign that was like 6 feet by 8 feet that said, they saw you coming literally a mile away, as the cliche goes. And I'm surprised it wasn't like flashing and all that kind of stuff. And you get out, you change, you have your head down, you're 15 years old. And they go, hey, Tom, you kill anybody today? No. Yes. So he did all of that and more, in addition to being a football coach. Then I had Coach Garman in physical education. And Coach, you can confirm or deny this today, but I had someone tell me that I was one of the best physical education students you ever had. Yes, no, maybe. And I think that was because if you guys that had Coach Garman, he had the bench. What you had to do, you had to jump over that bench. And I think I did it 45 times in a minute and a half. And I think that's probably why he thought I was a halfway decent phys ed student. Also track and field, we talked about that. He was a distance coach. And guess who ran the mile and 2 mile for Pittsburgh High? Me. Guess who came in last in the mile and 2 mile? Me. But let me tell you, Coach Garman, innovative, he knew what he was doing because he took that opportunity as a track coach to help his football program. He formed what was called, and some of you guys were in it, the tennis shoe crew. Offensive lineman, defensive lineman, you had to come out. If you played for Pittsburgh High, you knew that you had to go out for track because you just had to, because that's how you're going to get better if you want to play football or basketball. When Coach took over in '65, it was a basketball school. Ron White and Bill Russell, of course, those of us who grew up here. The number one thing you need to do is win. You got to beat Columbus. You got to win the coal bucket game. We won't talk about '73, and then you Fort Scott Parsons first. So we talked about the '70 playoff win at Topeka West in the War Bowl. That changed the image of Pittsburgh High School statewide. So the bar was set at that particular point in time. Lost the next week's Dodge City, 22-3, played that game in Hutchinson. The success would continue on into the 1970s. Coach Garman was one of the first to platoon. And I once, everybody thought, well, that's pretty cool, you arrest some people and so forth. And he said, no, that way fewer parents are mad at me. Everybody gets an opportunity to play. He was innovative. He used Polaroids on the side, the old shake it like a Polaroid. And I think the Kansas State High School Activity Association told you that you probably shouldn't be able to do that. So I leave, I come back in '77 as a sportscaster. And all of a sudden I'm working with Coach Garman. I'm going, man, I'm nervous. I'm sure the penetrating questions were, how do you think you'll play today, Coach? And things like that. He'd give me a scouting report. And every one of you guys that is in here that played, it's 5-6 pages. It's got the ovals. It's got the squiggly lines that look like tributaries and all this kind of stuff. I didn't play football. A gap, B gap, 3 technique, 5 technique. I have no idea what it meant. At the bottom of the page, what did it have? GATA. What did that mean? Get after their ass. And that's what Pittsburgh High did for 33 years under head coach Larry Garman. Fast forward 30 years. I'm a television guy in Greenville, South Carolina, Friday nights for the last 10 years. I've done over-the-air TV for the WLS television out of Asheville and Greenville area. So, which tells you anybody can be on television if I am. I'm standing on the field, and this young coach comes up to me. He goes, Tom, you want to take a look at the scouting report, kind of know what's going on, with our team today? And I go, yeah, I'll take a look at it. Look down, a bunch of ovals, a bunch of squiggly lines, 3 technique, 5 technique, A and B gap. I've seen this before. the bottom of the page, what does it have? GATA. And he goes, he's a young guy, he's on his way up, and he's gonna make it big. And he goes, you know what that means? I go, yeah. Get after their ass. And he goes, how do you know that? Larry Garman. By the way, Coach, they had 26 assistant coaches on that high school football team. Well, in the 80s, it was a great decade. 8 playoff appearances, 2 state championships, 83, 88, second at 87, and then 2 semifinal appearances and 1 quarterfinal appearance. What's the objective of Pittsburgh High football under Larry Garman? You are going to play until the snow flies, and that means you're going to have a chance to play and win state championships. 83, 88, 90, I was fortunate to broadcast 2 of those, 88 and 1990. 3 former players here today who played in those games, and they're going to give us our thoughts on those games and more. We're going to start 1983, Pittsburgh High beat Cape of Mount Carmel, 10-7 at KU. And to tell us about that, as a player and also as an assistant coach, is Mark Bollinger.
First, I'd like to have members of the team, the 83 team, and coaching staff, please stand up and be recognized. If you would, please. We had several come back. We had one guy, Chad Dolbear, all the way from Juneau, Alaska, come back for this. Also, on behalf of the team, I'd like to thank Karen, Rhonda, Greg, Julie, and their families. I know what a sacrifice being a coach's family is, and so we appreciate all the support you've given along the way. Finally, I'd like to thank the guys that's come before us. Pittsburgh High was on the map a long time before 1983. So if you played for Coach in the previous years before 1983, please stand up. You guys are what laid the groundwork for the success we had in the 80s. And I thank you very much. When Donnie called me, I got the same call Tommy Van Hoy got in September, and I said, sure, and I wasn't thinking there'd be this many people here. This is awesome. All because of you, Coach Garman. You did all this. This is amazing turnout. So I broke it up in three sections about the season. He said, talk about the season a little bit, and gave me 10 minutes. And I said, I can talk about the watermelon feed for 10 minutes. So I'm going to try to hurry through this, maybe a little long. Coach, correct me if I hit anything wrong, all right? I'm right here. Our team, we may have been a little bit cocky. We told Coach back in the spring and summer during weights, we're going to win a state championship in 1983. Not sure if he believed us, but we knew we were going to do that. Matter of fact, Jeff Cabanis, you can confirm, when we were in 4th and 5th grade flag football, we used to talk about winning the state championship back in those days. So when Tommy said the goal to play to the snowflies, that's correct, but the goal at Pittsburgh High is to win a state championship, period. It's been that way for a long time, and it'll continue to be that way. We used to stop by Coach's house on Thursday evening just to reassure Coach and Karen. I don't know if they liked us showing up every Thursday before a game, to reassure them that we had this game, we'd be okay. We didn't stay very long, but we were there every Thursday night just to reassure them. So let's talk about the team. We were made up of 39 players. That's including 12 seniors, 10 juniors, 15 sophomores, and 2 freshmen. One of those freshmen, is Kevin here? Kevin Perdigo? He was the first freshman to ever start for Coach Garman. Is that correct? All right. I'm on a roll. I'm 1 for 1 on facts. We had 3 returning starters in offense, 3 on defense. We had 9 first-year starters. Back then, we didn't 2 platoon. We went both ways. We had a new offense. We went from the wishbone to the I formation. If you saw us on paper, you probably weren't going to bet a lot of money on us that year with all the intangibles we had. Coach and the staff was smart enough to bring the I formation in because that best suited our team. And in my years as a coach, at the time, it didn't make a difference to us players. We're going to run the I. We'll run the I. But now, after years in coaching, you understand that your job as a coach is to put the best product out on the field. And he saw the talent that we had, and the I formation was the best opportunity. We also had a left tackle. He weighed 165 pounds, so he was pretty impressive. Scott Thomas, he's not here. We had a right guard, Pat Cedeno, who was a converted quarterback. Who does that? Converted quarterback to right guard, but we did it, and it was very successful. And he was also a kicker, by the way. I mentioned Kevin Verdugo starting as a freshman, a true freshman. I don't know when you started giving this part, Coach, about the biggest, fastest, strongest team. It may have been our year, because we definitely weren't the biggest, fastest, strongest team. But he used to always say, if the biggest, fastest, strongest team is going to win, it ain't going to be us. And that was a motivating factor. We had to figure out a way to win. It may have been us. We may have been the cause of that. Who knows? We may not have been the biggest, fastest, strongest team, but I'll tell you what we did do. We believed in three things, and it got us through the entire season. We believed in ourselves, we believed in our coaches, and we believed in our preparation. And that's what got us through, because we were 12-0, and it's a perfect season, but it was far from perfect. We had adversity during this season, and it started with game one. Week one, Coach Darlington was doing a warm-up drill, wasn't it, Coach, with the defensive end and linebackers, and Jeff Cabance on Tuesday before Independence knocks his shoulder down. Yeah, he's returning all-state, all-conference. He's got a shoulder separation. Adversity hits. His brother Wes stepped in at tailback, and I believe, Schwank, did you play? You played for him on the defensive end. So adversity hit. We overcame it. We beat Independence 40-6 at home opener. I'm going to go through these coming fast, because some of these we took care of pretty quick. Chanute, Blue Comets could beat 34-6 in game two. Neosho, 33-6. First trip to Missouri in a while. We always got hosed pretty good by the Fishlers over in Missouri. Don't know if because of coach's connection to Missouri or not, but Webb City beat them 36-8. Little note on that, I was in Coach's office in the spring when Webb City called to not want to play us any longer after that year. So it's hard to believe, but they did. Game 5 was Fort Scott. They scheduled us for homecoming. I mean, who does that? Who schedules Pittsburgh High for homecoming? They did, and they paid 30-6. But we were a good team. We were a caring team. We had one of our members, Robert Russian, who caringly, back towards the end of the game, wished one of their players a happy homecoming towards the end. And then Robert asked for an escort off the field around us linemen to get out of there safely. So then our first challenge came. It was Emporia. Emporia is a team that knocked us out of the playoffs the year before. You know, and Coach put them on a schedule for a reason. You know, to be the best, you got to play the best. You got to beat the best. So Emporia comes to town, and that was a physical game. I still think there's problems. I get out of bed in the mornings that I still hurt from that game. But the adversity is, you know, we're down with 5 minutes to go in the game, 21-17. The only people probably believe we're going to win that game is the people on that field on that sideline. It was a tough battle. They fumbled the ball on their own 27-yard line with, 2 or 3 minutes to go in the ball game. A big break. In that game, there was a lot of breaks. We had penalties, we had turnovers. They did. It was back and forth. But we got the last big break. We were able to march the ball down, get down inside the 5, and the racehorse, Jeff Cabance, scored a winning touchdown. Again, adversity, we're down, we face it, and come away with the victory. Again, it's a hard game. Thank God we had Altamont next week. If you guys remember Altamont, it was kind of Coach Watson's back to basics week. We got the sleds out, we got the boards out, we did all the basics. It was a good recovery week, 35-0 at Labette in the mud. Then the NATO come from Coffeyville, week 8. It happens to be our last home game of the season, by the way, too. This is kind of different now. Everybody's guaranteed a home playoff game or whatever, not back then. We're down 21-20 in the fourth quarter late. And again, it's one of those things. We stick together. You know, we're not going to we guaranteed Coach we're going to get this done. And he pulled out a call, either him or Coach Watson, Coach Nance, pulled out a little call from the bag of tricks, old hook and ladder play, which Pittsburgh High has not done that. You don't have that on film from us. And it worked. Waltrip rolls out, throws the ball to Craig Ertley, about 5 yards down the field. Jeff Cabance come running around, pitched the ball to Jeff Cabance. He goes another 15 or 16 yards. Then they grab onto his face mask. It's another 15. We're in business. We're in business. And I will say this, Jeff, they didn't catch you. They got the angle on you, right? Nobody ever caught Jeff Cabance. They always got the angle on him. He was the fastest guy I knew. He was faster than I was, so he was the fastest guy I knew. We get the ball down to the 5-yard line with 20 seconds left. And remember that guy I said it was a converted quarterback and kicker? We call on Pat Cedeno to get the old, remember the day we had the old square toe kicking shoe? So we get it. I think we always had to call a timeout to get that happening too. We always had to save a timeout for the shoe exchange. Pat Cedeno comes out, kicks the ball through the uprights. We win that ball game, 23-21. Again, adversity. We're down. Time's running out, but we find a way to win. Next game may have been my favorite game. That was Parsons. They were number 1 in the state, and we were number 2. This is game 9. Back in those days, not everybody got to go to the playoffs. You had to win your district to go. And so again, they were 1, and we were number 2. The estimates of how many people were there varies, 6,000 or more. It was a huge crowd. I've never seen that many people at one place. It was awesome. We have a great pregame speech. Coach gets us fired up. We're getting ready to shuffle out the door, and the officials come to the door. You guys can't go out. We're hearing the crowd go crazy. There's my man right there. What we missed, and I wish everybody had cell phones back in that. Well, take that back. I'm glad they didn't. But on this occasion, I wish they would have had a cell phone, because what we missed was the birth of the Sean Strasser rule. So we're in the locker room, and again, this is going off of what I was told. Strasser, incognito, joins the Parsons student section. He's an alumni now. He knows better. He's older. He knows better. He joins the Parsons student section with a trench coat on, or some type of a coat, right? Was it trench coat or? Yeah. And right before their players came out, he rips the trench coat off, and he's donning either his leather jacket or a jersey. It's purple something, and he runs through their sign and heads to our sign. Yes. And I think the Strasser rule is still in effect. I don't think when Pittsburgh and Parsons plays, I don't think they can have student tunnels anymore. At least it was when I was coaching. Classic. I mean, I guess the stands filed out, and maybe had people on the field. Well, we were in the locker room for quite some time. And that was just the first of the adversity. We come out, start the game, a huge crowd, and with less than 4 minutes to go in the game that started, so we're at 8:03. The Dragons are down 12-0. 12-0. That's the most we've been down the whole season. After Parsons scored that second touchdown, we're coming off the field, and who's there to meet us? Coach Garman, of course. I knew he wasn't happy because he had his headphones off, had him on the side of his hip, and he asked that question that I'll never forget. That question was, what in the hell is going on? And we're kind of like, okay. Jeff Cabance, who's always calm, the thoroughbred, racehorse, whatever, he's always calm. He calmly says, Coach, don't worry about it. We got it under control. And Coach's face just went blank. And he was speechless for a second. And he said, you better. And we went on to score 20 unanswered points and won 20-12. So we had you, Coach. We had you. That was huge. That was a great victory. Again, adversity, we were down. We never gave up. Again, it goes back. You have trust. You have faith in your players, your coaches, and your preparation. You get old, you got to write this stuff down. Even though I talked quite a bit about it. The playoffs come around, so we're in the playoffs. Like I told you, we never had a home game. We had to travel. The first week, we got to travel back to Fort Scott. We could play the Tigers twice, and we beat them twice. 32-14 the second time. That bought us a ticket to Bishop Miege, who was a class program at the time and obviously still is today. We were the country boys from southeast Kansas coming up to Kansas City to play the Stags. Not a lot of people in the state gave us a chance for that game. And we handed them a 24-0 beatdown. So we took care of our business. I think if you didn't believe by then, you believed after that game. Anybody watching? That bought us a ticket to KU's Memorial Stadium. How am I doing on time, too? Where's the timekeeper? All right. Bought us a ticket to the KU Memorial Stadium. We played Cape and Mount Carmel, coached by Ed Crewell. They were the big program. I mean, they either played in the state championship or, won it second, whatever. They had been it. Again, 9-2. Not a lot of believers out there in the state of Kansas except for the people in 6'6", 7'6" that believed in us. We go up there and kind of like our style, we get down 7-0 early. We're playing from behind. And we're playing from behind in the second quarter 7-0. We go into halftime. And Coach has a great way of grabbing your attention at halftime. And it kind of goes like, sit down, be quiet, get your helmet off, and we're going to win this game. That's kind of how it starts. Then he goes about telling you how you're going to win this game. I mean, a lot came true that game anyway. We go back out in the fourth quarter. It's fourth down. I believe it was fourth down, 4th and 22. Roll out to the left. Waltrip throws a beautiful pass to Robert Russian. He turns. The ball is right there. Catches it. 6 points. Touchdown. We get the extra point. It's tied up. Comes down to the very end. 7-7. And it's a dogfight. They were big, weren't they, boys? Those guys come out. They had six-pack abs before we knew what six-pack abs were. I mean, they were some big kids. Kevin Ferdigo, around their last possession, he picks the ball off with about 3 minutes to go in the game, 4 minutes to go in the game at the Cape and Mount Carmel 31-yard line. We then move the ball down and chew the clock up, get the ball inside the 5, call a timeout to get the shoe on. Bring Pat out. This is it, man. This is a storybook story, right? This is it, the ending. The snap, the hold, the kick. It's wide right. But it's okay because we looked around. This was on the ground. Roughing the kicker. So we got to move it up with no time left to re-kick it. And Pat puts it through the uprights. 10-7, ball game was over. That's it. That couldn't have ended any better than the way it did. We had a huge crowd up there that day at KU Memorial. Back in those days, it was probably bigger than KU's crowd, to be honest with you. Coach, we are so proud to deliver you that first state championship. The moment in the locker room after, when it was just the players and the coaches, was a good moment. The tears of joy come down your face. Meant everything to us. We knew what we'd done. Now, when we came back to Pittsburgh, I'll be a little careful here. We had one of the most epic house parties in the history of house parties in Pittsburgh, Kansas. I think the statute of limitations has ran out, so we saw people we didn't even know at that party. It was great. What a celebration. City went all out. We were met with, I think, fire trucks and police cars bringing us back into town, and it was just a great. I think we were special guests at the Christmas parade the following on that Monday. Just a great way to wrap up the season. Everybody, grab a drink, whatever you're drinking. I don't have one with me, so. But finally, to the man, the myth, the legend, Coach Garman. Thank you will never be enough. You have been so much to so many. You were a proud papa when we did well, and you gave us that quick kick in the ass when we didn't do so well. Both were appreciated and deserved. The lessons that you have taught us still remain with us today. One I will share, and it's a simple one, but the message about if you're not 10 minutes early, you're late. Never been late for anything in my life, Coach, and I owe it to you. That's a little one, but those are important things. We are proud to be your boys, and we love you. Congratulations on 60 years of coaching, making a difference in young men's lives. God bless you and your family, Coach. Congratulations. Let's go.
Well, that was the first. Next one would come in 1988. Pittsburgh High beats Goddard, 35-14, K-State. Matt McLeod had a big day that day, a couple touchdowns, and able to get another state championship. Matt will come up now and tell us a little bit about that season and that game.
Wow, what a day, right? What a day. Thank you so much for having me for such a wonderful occasion. Thanks to everyone involved, Rick Webb, Rex Garner, Donnie Free, who called me. I'm just really, really thankful to be here and to be a part of this. This is an amazing experience. Today's a celebration of Coach Garman and of Purple Dragon football. It is truly my honor and my privilege to represent the 1988 state champion Purple Dragons. Everyone in my class knows what I'm about to talk about, and I'm going to share it with those who haven't heard this story. The year of the dork. That's what the seniors to be were told by none other than Coach Garman himself. It was the last day of school, May 1988. The tradition back then, on the last day of school, Coach would bring in the seniors to be on the team for a meeting. I can still see it. The little theater at PHS. We thought it would be, talk about summer weights, talk about camp, talk about the season and so on. I mean, during our junior year, we'd gone 9-3, losing to Capon in the state championship game. We were really excited about it becoming our team. We'd made it. Boy, we were wrong. Coach, this will be the first, and I promise the last time I'm ever going to do an impression of you in front of you. But I have to because it makes the story better. So I apologize. And many people do a better job. Joe Bernoble, for one. Donnie Free, too. Now, I'm sure Coach did talk about the summer schedule, but here's what we all took from it, and here's what I personally remember. I've never liked this class. There's no athletes in this class. You don't have any speed. You don't have any athletic ability. You're a bunch of physical dorks. This is the year of the dork. Now, to say we were all taken aback would be a massive understatement. Again, we thought this meeting would be somewhat of a coronation. We're seniors now, it's our team. Instead, our legendary coach is telling us he doesn't like us. That basically we're just holding down the fort until the golden boy, Brian Hutchins, and his class can win it all. Love you, Hutch. To put it mildly, we were pissed off. The year of the dork became our rallying cry. Heck, we still use it today, don't we, guys? 35 years later. We do, Coach. What we thought was a slight, an act of disrespect, was actually a masterful psychological tactic that drove us. During the season, someone brought it up weekly, if not daily, right, guys? The coaches don't like us because we don't have any superstars? Well, we'll show them. You don't think we have any athletic ability? Watch this. Our team ended up going 11-1 and beating Goddard like a rented mule in the state championship game. Years later, Coach was quoted as saying the best coaching job his staff ever did was on the 88 team. I agree with you, Coach. The coaching staff did an amazing job, incredible. Coaching us up all the way to a state championship. So I'd like to recognize the staff from the 88 team. Coaches, if you're here, please stand. Benny Bernhardt, Tim Burns, Dennis Watson, Joe Martin, Mike Darlington, Coach Larry Garman. Colonel Danny Nance was also on that staff. Thank you, coaches, for everything you did for us. Hey, would the rest of the 88 team stand as well? Please go ahead, guys. Let's stand up. State champion, 1988. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the influence being a Purple Dragon has had on my own life. My position coaches were Coach Garman all 4 years, and Quim, the 1 year they tried to play me on defense. Remember that, Quim? Those two had a huge influence on me in many ways, especially when I later became a teacher and a coach myself, which is amazing. I've been coaching now 27 years. It feels like forever, 60 years. What a blessing, Coach, amazing. I find myself using phrases such as singleness of purpose, for example, with my players and students, and I still to this day use that phrase. I have high expectations for my players and students, and I hold them accountable. Quim had high expectations, didn't you, Quim? And he didn't care if the guy you were going against was twice your size, he expected you to get the job done. Coach Garman and Quim pushed me farther than I thought I could go, both mentally and physically. I never understood just how special Purple Dragon football was and still is until I started coaching myself in other schools and programs. I'm going to finish with a personal story that I've literally never shared with anybody on planet Earth. I'm going to share it with you right now. It's an amazing moment that happened between me and my son. So all of you parents out there can relate. When you have those moments with your kids that are special, you hang on to those. I'm going to share this with you today. About 5 years ago or so, Pitt State was we're playing at Washburn, and I've lived in Kansas City for several decades now, and so I saw the chance to go see Pitt State play and to see Coach Garman, because it had been a while since I'd seen him. My son was a senior at the time, and so I said, hey, let's go over to Topeka, let's watch the gorillas, we'll go over to the burger stand and get a great burger, and I want you to meet my high school coach. And so we went early. It was a beautiful day. I don't know if you remember, Coach. It was a beautiful day that day in Topeka, which is rare. But so we went early, and the gorillas were warming up, and I got Coach's attention, and he came over, and my son and I walked down, and there was a fence between the sideline and the track, and my son and I walked down, and we talked, we visited, and I introduced my son to Coach, and we caught up, and it's always great seeing Coach. And then eventually he had to go back to it, and my son and I turned to walk back up in the bleachers to sit and watch the game, and I'll never forget it as long as I live. My 18-year-old son turned and looked me in the eye. This is a kid who's still in high school, mind you. He looked me in the eye and he said, Dad, I wish that I had the relationship with my coach like you do with yours. What an amazing experience that was. He saw the way he and I interacted. He saw the love between us, the respect that I have for him. And it was one of those amazing moments as a dad. It's truly a blessing to be a part of this amazing program. I hope everybody knows and realizes that. I'm really feeling it today at this amazing event. And it's a blessing to be coached by one of the greatest coaches in Kansas history. Thank you so much. God bless you all. Much love. Let's have a great night.
But there was another state championship, right? 1990, Pittsburgh High and Bueller, K-State. Pittsburgh High wins it 28-10 on that day. Much more about that in the season from Drew Rhodes.
Man, I am fired up to be here this afternoon. Can you boys back there in the cheap seats, can you hear me? Is everybody tired or drunk yet? Matt and Bo, great job. Way to lead things off. And Tom, it is great to hear your voice. After all these years, my mom and dad finally got to hear you call my name out. You know, when I got asked to do this, I had no idea there was going to be so many people here today. You must have had a heck of an influence, as the guys have been saying, I'm telling you. Kind of wish I'd have paid more attention in 9th grade beginning speech class for sure. You know, I got asked to represent the 1990 team, and I have no idea how in the hell I got asked to do that. I mean, I was a 170-pound player that was one step faster than being called slow. I mean, that team was loaded with all-stars, all-staters, badasses, and outlaws for sure. But I hope to honor my teammates. I hope to honor all the Dragons, the parents, and the coaches in the house tonight. It's certainly a special time to get to be up here today for sure. I cannot start this out with a lie, though, okay? I didn't weigh 170 pounds when I played football. See, the summer before my senior year, when I went in to go get my physical, I stuffed my pockets with rolls of quarters. You can't tell me I was the only one in this room that did something like that. And I tell you, after all these years, I think my mama was the only one that knew that I did that. Now, my mama, she loves Larry Garman, and she loves some dragon football. She's probably the one that told me to do it. I'm going to be in trouble after this. Hey, I think that God gave each and every one of you in this room a superpower, and hopefully you have realized what your superpower is, and it has helped you to live an abundant life. When I think back about what Larry's superpower was, and it still feels weird calling him Larry, but my son's here and I'm trying to impress him, so I'm going to man up a little bit. Was Larry's superpower the ability to game plan in the X's and O's in football? Well, he was good at that, but I don't think that's his superpower. Was Larry's superpower the ability to stand in front of a group of young men and give a fiery speech where the hair on the back of your neck stood up and you're ready to run through a wall for him? Well, he was damn sure good at that, but I don't think that was his superpower. See, what I think Larry's superpower was it probably still is the ability to get you to believe. First and foremost, the ability to get you to believe in yourself. See, I don't know what it's like for you guys when you rolled into high school for the first time, but for me, I was quiet, I was shy, wasn't real strong, and I wasn't a real good student. But through the things I learned in the football program, whether that was game planning, film study, weightlifting, I started to get more confidence. I started to believe in myself more. I got stronger, and I became a little better student. The other thing that Larry had to get you to believe in was the team, and that nothing was more important than the team. And inside that team, you had to believe that the guy next to you was going to do his job. You had to make him believe you were going to do your job. And the other thing is you had to believe in Coach Garman. You had to believe that Coach Garman was going to work harder than all the other coaches we were going to face. You had to believe that Coach Garman was going to put the team first. And you had to believe that Coach Garman had your best interest in mind, and he was going to put you in a position to be successful to help the team. Now, there's a lot of different words that you can use, but I really like the word believe. Now, in order for him to get this accomplished, he had to do what some people might like to call the Jedi mind tricks. But you know, back then, I preferred to call it mental warfare. I mean, how many of you guys can remember him standing there saying, "This is the best time of your life"? Bullshit. I don't know anybody that wanted to get up early on a Saturday morning to go scrimmage in August when it's 110 degrees and you got to run 110 plays. And then when you got that done, you got the great opportunity to run gassers. Now, I can still see him on that football field wagging his finger over and back, over and back. Best time of my life, my ass. But you know, once I got done with football and got out into the real world and started getting a little bit of traction, I started thinking, you know, maybe Coach Garman was teaching a little bit more than just football. Maybe he was teaching life. Because see, in life, if you don't believe in yourself and what you're doing, you're going to struggle. And maybe you had to be a part of a team in life and you learned those attributes from being on the team. And quite truthfully, don't you think society would be a whole hell of a lot better off if more people would embrace the team concept to move us forward in a positive manner? Thanks. You know, maybe you had a boss you had to believe in, or maybe you became the boss and you had to get people to believe in you. See, next to my father, no other man taught me more about life than Larry Garman, and I am blessed. I have a great father, but guess what? There was so many boys that didn't have that. And Larry Garman, he readily jumped right in and filled that role for them. Now, the 1990 state championship team, I could talk about for hours. I could talk about the players, the plays, the games, all the statistics that were compiled that year. But if I was just to get across to you what that team was just pissed off. We were pissed off our junior year that we didn't go to the state championship. We were pissed off that the seniors that year, who were some of our very best friends, didn't go to the state championship that year. Because see, well before we ever showed up, there was a standard that was set. And it wasn't good enough just to meet that standard. You had to push that standard higher. See, our freshman year, in 1987, we went to the state championship and we came up a little bit short. And I'm going to tell you something, that team had some badasses on it. Our sophomore year in 88, Matt just got done talking about it, we won the state championship. In our junior year in 1989, we let a game against Washburn Rural slip through our fingers and we should have won the damn thing. And I guarantee if we'd have won that, we'd have another state championship banner hanging in the gymnasium. So after that game and after that year, you could just tell there was a different sense of urgency. Guys worked out together, guys hung out together, guys conditioned together. I mean, you put it in a room, you could just smell the difference. Now, I'm not going to lie, whether you were a sophomore on that team, a junior, or a senior, that team was loaded with talent. I'm talking loaded with talent. And here's another thing, and not everybody's going to agree with me, but I don't care. I truly believe that Larry Garman had the best coaching staff through those years that he ever had. Those coaches were outstanding teachers, coaches, and mentors to young men. They believed in him, they believed in the program, and they believed in the players, and I'm talking about you. But you know what? I've seen a hell of a lot of teams with great talent not win a championship. And I've seen a lot of teams with a great coaching staff not win a championship, but this team was different. From the opening kickoff of the first game, this team played with a reckless abandonment and a complete disregard for their own physical well-being, let alone the teams they played against. Now, the toughest game I ever played in was a playoff game against Ark City. Ark City came to Hutchfield to play us in the playoffs. They were big, they were strong, they were fast, and they were big. And our offense, we could not move the ball against those guys. I mean, we couldn't get it across the 50-yard line. I mean, it's like hitting a brick wall. And you got to understand that the defense of that 1990 team was the best defense ever constructed at Pittsburgh High School. And the offense wasn't far behind, because at the end of the year, we were like the highest scoring offense Pittsburgh ever had. But we couldn't move the ball. So we had this tight end by the name of Ryan Keith. Now, Ryan Keith wasn't a stud, okay? Ryan Keith was a freaking stud. I mean, if you played next to him or you had to play against him, you knew he was a freaking stud. I'm talking a man playing with young men. So we dialed up this play where we were going to toss Ryan Keith the ball. Now, here's what's really odd about that. Back then, we only threw the ball about twice a year. But as I'm standing here, I can see this play unfolding on Hutch Field. Ryan Keith running down the right hash. We toss him the ball. He catches it. He gets across the 50, the 45, the 40, the 35, and gets tackled on about the 32-yard line. And on that play, Ryan Keith gave up his knee, and Ryan Keith never put on football pads again. But it was that play that got the offense rolling, got us moving, got us in the end zone, got us past Ark City, where we eventually blew through the playoffs, blew through the state championship. As a matter of fact, we got to play Washburn Rule again. We went up to Topeka, and I can honestly say from the opening kickoff, we kicked the piss out of that team all night long. It was a special time and it was a special team. And I thank you for letting us be a part of that. I had a current player ask me, he goes, hey, man, if you could do it all over again, would you do it? And, man, you could just tell that he's in the moment. He's drinking Dragon Kool-Aid. He's all excited. I didn't answer him. And he asked me again, and I didn't answer him. So I'm going to answer you now in front of God and everybody in this room. If I had the opportunity to do it all over again, would I? And that's an easy answer. Absolutely not. I had my time, and I did my time. And like so many Dragons out in this crowd tonight, I bled on that football field. I puked on that football field. I cried on that football field. And I celebrated on that football field. And I never once took for granted when I put on that uniform what it meant to so many people in our community. And I never once put on that uniform and took for granted the hundreds of Dragons that came before us to set the standard to where we were at. And I never once took for granted when I put on that uniform the standard that was expected to be and how we were supposed to push it forward for the next generations of Dragons. And I never once took for granted when I put on that uniform the responsibility we had to play like Dragons, because there was some little boy in the stands watching us, dreaming of being a Dragon, believing that he was going to be the next great football player for Pittsburgh High School. And for all the folks in this room that never played for Larry Garman, that's exactly what it's like. You believed in him, you believed in the program, and you gave it everything that you had. I was blessed to be born at a time that allowed me to be a part of this team. I played with some amazing athletes. I played with my best friends. I love you all, and you guys will forever always be my hero. It was an absolute honor to put on the purple helmet and the purple jersey, And it was an absolute privilege for me to get to say I played for Larry Garman because it was one of the best times of my life. Thank you.
Thanks a lot to Mark and to Matt and Drew. There's some energy in the building, I would say. Those guys took a look back on those state championships and the great run that Coach Garman had as the high school football coach at Pittsburgh High School. Second half, we're going to have a family perspective as well. We're going to have Coach Garman going to talk about a number of different things as well. And then we're going to take you back in time a little bit and take a look at Pittsburgh State and the great success they've had here since we're in this facility. And I can tell you from firsthand knowledge, this is absolutely unbelievable what Pittsburgh State has here. And a lot of people need a big congratulations to make this happen. And it doesn't happen unless you're highly successful. And Pitt State, as well as Pittsburgh High, over the last 37 years or so have been outstanding. So as we get set to start our second half here, we're going to begin with Rhonda Garman-Gregory, and Rhonda's going to come up and give us the family perspective, and these are the important people behind the success of football coaches. Rhonda.
Hello, everybody. I'm very pleased to be here. When I got the first call about this, my first thought was, nobody else show up. You proved me wrong, and I'm happy that you did. So, Donnie said he wanted me to give some family perspective about what it was like to be in the Garman family. The truth is you really don't. So I've picked some stories that I think will be fun to share and things that will give you a little perspective on us being the children and the family of Larry and Karen Garman. So we've got aunts and uncles here and cousins, and we're just so thankful that y'all came up. So I do have one caveat. Anything I say essentially was pre the year 2000, and the world wasn't quite as politically correct back then, and this is LG, so don't be surprised, if you hear something that seems somewhat inappropriate. And this seems like an appropriate time to tell you that, Mom has survived the 60 years as well, and we'll talk about her in a minute, but she survived so well that my sister and my daughter and my niece all thought that marrying high school football coaches was a good idea. So we have a real illness among the women in our family. So here we go. So the earliest story that I know about my dad, he was maybe 4 or 5, I don't know exactly, but he had a pet goat. Larry Garman's first pet was a goat, and the name of the goat was Billy, which strikes me as not very original, maybe even a little bit redundant, kind of like running the ball over and over and over and over and over. His next pet was a pony named Nubbin, no S, Nubbin. I wish Susie Barber were here. She'd get a kick out of that. He gave the neighborhood kids rides on the pony, which I think is pretty impressive. He's always been a leader. He was willing to share his pony with the neighborhood kids. I also have a copy of the first newspaper article that was ever written about Larry Garman. It's from 1948. I'm going to read you a little bit of it. It says, birthday party. Mrs. Bremer Chase, that was his grandmother, entertained a group of boys and girls Friday afternoon in honor of her grandson, Larry Garman. The time was spent in playing games. Then the guests were invited into the dining room where a lovely cake bearing 9 candles in animal holders formed the centerpiece for the table. The cake was cut and served with ice cream. The youngsters received balloons as favors. Guests included Karen Kidwell, among other people. But my mother has been there since the beginning, God bless her. So that was his early press. As we all know, there have been numerous articles written about him since. My daughter claims the fame that she was the first member of the family to ever appear on ESPN, though. So congrats to Kristen. Okay. So here's an interesting story. The early sports stories I know about my dad don't have anything to do with football. When he was a freshman in high school, it was a gym class, and the baseball coach was also the gym teacher. And Dad says, I'm throwing batting practice to the baseball team. And he says, the last guy bats, the coach gets up and walks up to me and says, hey, Larry, go eat your lunch and go by my office and pick up a uniform. You're starting for the baseball team today after school. We're going to go play and you're going to start. He won that game. He pitched that game and won that game. And that began his baseball career. His baseball career also took him to NEO, Northeastern Oklahoma A&M in Miami. And in 1957, and he told me this one day, he and I were driving down to Miami for something. He goes, hey, that's a baseball field where I played in the 1957 Junior College World Series. And I said, how'd you do, Dad? Led all batters with a .447 batting average. I had never heard this story before. So he was a baseball player. He was also a basketball player. Oh, I know, I forgot something. So that World Series led to a tryout with the Kansas City Athletics. And so I asked him recently, I said, oh, Dad, do you feel bad that you didn't make the pros in baseball? Nope, I don't. And I said, well, how come you didn't make the team? He said, I couldn't catch, I couldn't throw, and I couldn't run. So at least he knew his limitations. One of my earliest memories is of him coaching basketball at Joplin McCauley High School. He must have been student teaching from Pitt State. Little bitty, skinny, tall guy. And I'm telling you, he had the best flat top that God ever gave a man. It was about 1.5 inches high. When he had hair, he had great hair. If any of you were privileged to see that, he had great hair. So here he is in this little skinny suit, little bitty skinny tie, and he's telling these guys what's up and what's down. And so I watched him coach basketball. And then I have a memory of being at the old basketball auditorium here, and after asking some questions of the family, I found out that he and my Uncle Ron, who we lost just last month, and some other guys, tall, skinny, scrappy guys, were playing against let me get this right, the Marcus Haynes All-Stars, which were doing an exhibition tour. They were an offshoot team from the Harlem Globetrotters. So Dad said, we were pretty good, these guys over here. And he said, we outplayed in the first half. We're ahead. Of course, I always assumed when you played those guys, you signed a contract that says we won't win. But anyway, he said they went in at halftime, and he said they came back out and they had decided to play real basketball. So they beat them, but they were ahead of this Harlem Globetrotters team for a while, which I think was pretty cool. We're going to jump forward in the story of his life about 30 years. That's when he was spending all of his time working on you guys and on this program. Julie and Greg and I all have, great memories from our childhood, but we're going to keep those to ourselves, and I hope you all will allow us to do that. But I'm going to talk a little bit about some things that happened that time, and we're going to talk about him as a grandparent and a great-grandparent. So the roast, many of you were probably at the roast, and I had been asked to speak at the roast. I canceled at the last minute because I had a surgery that I had to have, and it was kind of a scary surgery. They thought I had cancer, and so I go in for the surgery, and my mom and my dad, of course, were there with my now ex-husband, and they're in the waiting room, and they've been told that they're going to have to wait a long time because they're going to drill into my head and all this stuff. And so the neurosurgeon comes out, and he looks at mom and dad and Jim, and he says, well, it went better than we thought. We didn't have to open up her skull. He goes, it was a little growth on the side of her head, and he said it was connected by a kind of a little tail, and he goes, it was about the size of my thumbnail, and then he says, and it was shaped like a football. They all cracked up, for a lot of reasons, and Dad's last word on the incident was, I guess she'll find a way to blame this on me. So I'm going to jump forward to 93. Any of you guys that played in 93, my granddad John died in the fall of 93, Dad's father. We loved him very much. Many of you saw him at games over the years, and there was a little controversy about will Larry coach, will he not coach? And of course he coached, because that's what Granddad would have wanted. But I was really proud that day to be a Dragon alumni. The 93 team got up, those boys put on suits and ties. They drove down to middle of nowhere, Seneca, Missouri, to the Church of Christ and sat there and honored my dad for my grandfather's death. And after the funeral, every one of those boys walked by and looked at my grandfather and shook my dad's hand. And he was so appreciative. And we were so appreciative too. So you 93 guys, thank you so much for that. So my son, Jared, is the oldest grandchild. And Jared was always kind of a little guy, and he didn't play football till all of a sudden he decides he wants to play football. Made me a little nervous, but he came down and trained a little bit. My dad's looking at his watch. He came down and trained a little bit with the PHS team. And then Dad wanted to come up and watch practice at our stadium. Now, Winnetonka football was not good then. They hadn't been good for years. I don't think they'd won 3 games in 10 years. But Dad came up, and he and I went to football practice. Now, our football stadium was down in a bowl, so you could sit up on the hill, and there was a fence, and you had to walk down the hill and walk across the track and whatever. So Dad can't see from the car, so he gets out of the car and walks up to the fence, and he stands there for a minute. Well, he can't really see from the fence. So next thing I know, he's on the hill, and I'm like, oh, no, he's walking down the hill, and I think, well, he's just going to get down there to the track. Oh, no. He crossed the track, and I see coaches looking at, like, who is this, So they start converging on him, and I see this from Larry, from Dad. You all know that, hey, I'm Larry Garman. And lo and behold, one of the Winnetonka coaches knows him because they've coached against him from Springfield. He starts inviting the other coaches over to meet him. Dad stays on the field for practice and ends up being closer to the action than the Winnetonka coaches. So Jared was not humiliated, and that was the most important thing for me that day. Oh, I forgot to tell you something about Granddad John, who we love dearly. Granddad John agrees with everybody in this room. Dad did not pass the ball often enough. So Mom and Dad were very busy with their careers. My kids came along, and my kids were actually jealous of Julie's kids because Abby and Spencer and Kaylee were here in town. So Dad got to go see Abby play basketball and volleyball, and see Spencer play football and baseball, and see Kaylee's performances with the musicals and things. So he tried very hard to make it occasionally up for a game for my kids, and they appreciated that. Now, Kristen was a soccer player, and here's where the politically incorrect comes in. Those of you who know Dad well know that he views soccer as a communist sport. The countries that played soccer, So he's sitting out at the Winnetonka soccer stadium up on a hill in the cold. He's got his hat pulled down, and he's got his arms crossed and not looking like he's happy to be there. But the coach takes over, and he, Rhonda, I don't know anything about this game, but if I were coaching this game, I'd take that girl right there, and I'd put her on the corner of those white lines, the goal box, and the girl he picked was our best player. She went on to coach in college. And he said, I'd just tell them all to kick her the ball, and she'd score every time. And I said, well, Dad, that would be offsides. This game has offsides? He was more interested after that because that made sense to him. So Jared's senior year, and I'll make this one quick because this will make me cry. Dad was able to come up for a Thursday night football game. He left PHS practice a little early, Ben remembers. And we're in the stands watching the game, and I hear Dad, coaches see games very differently than the rest of us, and I hear Dad say, Jared is open in the end zone. Now, remember I told you Jared was a little bitty guy. He was not a great football player. Sure enough, they throw Jared the ball, and the only touchdown he ever scored in high school, Dad was there. So we were pretty excited about that. So in the fall of 1998, I get a phone call from my dad. Now, I would like for you to understand that in all of my life up to 1998, I don't think I had ever gotten a call from my dad. And he calls and he says, this is it. This is the last season. I'm going to be done. So we decide as a family to attend as many games as we can. We went to some regular season games. We were at Fort Scott when a new kid from out of town who happened to play that communist sport, but couldn't because the athletic director didn't let it into the school because he knew he'd lose football players to soccer, won the game with a field goal. We were then in at Blue Valley. What a game. What an exciting game. 4 quarters wasn't enough, 4 overtimes, and we lose by a field goal. It was heartbreaking to be on that field and know that this was over. You know, he then that spring retired, and next thing you know, I mean, before he's had a moment to breathe, before mom's had a moment to go, yay, he is working at Pitt State. So that was a tough year, but a fun year to know that we were able to watch the end. Most of you all didn't know it was the end. We knew it was the end. So a little personal story. I did fundraising sales when my kids were in high school, and back then you'd go into a high school, and I went to a lot of little outlying high schools around Kansas City, and they'd send you to the activities director, who very often was the athletic director, who very often was the football coach. So I'd just bone up on some facts about their football team, and I'd start talking about my fundraising sales, and I'd hit them with, hey, you know, I saw that y'all won last Friday night. And, oh, yeah, do you like football? I like football. You know, who do you follow? I follow a lot of teams. Well, how do you like football? My dad coaches football. Really? Where does he coach? Oh, he coaches in Kansas. Well, what's his name? Would I maybe know him? And I said, well, it's Larry Garman. Larry Garman is your dad? And I'd smile and I'd leave with a contract. You know, I probably owe dad commissions, but it was a nice way to get some business, you know, so I'd name drop that name a time or two. So in the early 2000s, I decided it was time to finish my college degree. I'd prefer it if y'all wouldn't talk about this in front of my dad. It still makes him mad that I didn't finish it when I lived here. But I'm down at Mid-American Nazarene University talking to the Dean of Admissions, and he's looking over my application, and, you know, we're chatting, and he looks down, he looks up, and he says, Larry Garman is your father? And I think, how is this going to benefit me here? But I smile and go, yes, yes. He goes, the Larry Garman? And I smile sweetly and go, yes, yes. And he goes, the Nazarene missionary, Larry Garman? Now, I told that story for the first time to the family at a Thanksgiving meal, and I'll just tell you, I thought we were going to lose LG. He laughed very hard. He might have choked on his food, but I said, no, the football coach, Larry Garman. He was less than impressed at that. So just 2 more things. Dad's giving me the stink eye. You should all know that the real hero of this story is my mom. She filled so many voids as a mother and a grandmother when he was MIA due to football. She has been there since the beginning, 2nd grade to be exact. She has stood not only behind him, but to the side of him when all the attention has been showered on him. Not many women would have been happy doing that for 60 years. I regularly tell her, now that he's at Pitt State, you don't have to go anymore, Mom. You don't have to go anymore. And I mean it, and she knows I mean it. But here's what I'll tell you. He loves coaching, and he needs coaching. And he loves her, and he needs her. So my final words I'm borrowing from John Grisham. If any of you have not read this book, because of the love that I feel from all of you for Pittsburgh High School football, you should get it and read it. It's a simple little read. It's about a player who loves his coach, also has other feelings for his coach, but I've plagiarized a little bit, and I hope that John Grisham would not punish me for that. Once you've played for Larry Garman, you carry him with you forever. You hear his voice, you see his face, you long for his smile of approval. You remember the tongue lashings and lectures. With each success in life, you want him to know about it. You want to say, hey, coach, look at what I've done. And you want to thank him for touching you and teaching you that success is not an accident. And with each failure, you want to apologize because he did not teach you to fail. He refused to accept failure, and you want his advice on how to overcome it. At times, you get tired of carrying Larry Garman around with you. You want to be able to screw up and not hear him bark at you. You want to slide and cut a corner, and you don't want to hear his whistle. Then his voice will quietly tell you to pick yourself up, to set a new goal, to work harder than everybody else, to stick to the basics, execute perfectly, be confident, be brave, and never, never quit. His voice is never far away. His spirit lives in the hearts and minds and souls of all the young boys he touched, all the kids who became men under Larry Garman. His spirit moves us and motivates us and comforts us and will for the rest of our lives, I guess. 15 years later, I think about Coach Garman more than ever. There is a question I've asked myself 1,000 times, and I know that every player here has struggled with it too. And the question is, do I love Larry Garman or do I hate him? I've answered the question differently every day since the first time he blew his whistle and barked at me. Coach Garman was not easy to love. And while you're playing here, you really don't like him. But after you leave, after you venture away from this place, after you've been kicked around a few times and faced some adversity, some failure, been knocked down by life, you soon realize how important he is to you. You always hear his voice urging you to pick yourself up, to do better, to never quit, and you miss that voice. Once you're away from here, you miss him so much. Dad, I think it's safe to say that tonight we all love you. Thank you all.
All right, this may be the shortest introduction of all time. We know everything there is to know about Coach Garman, right? Ladies and gentlemen, Larry Garman.
Now, I'm going to tell you something. It'll be short and sweet and hard to beat. I don't have any notes. I've heard all these players talk, heard my daughter talk. They've all had their notes. I don't have any notes, so we're going to take it all in. I appreciate you coming. When I found out about this deal, I had no idea that it would be like this, but when you got Rick Webb running it and people like Rex Garner and Donnie Free and Jeff Goebel, you're going to get something done good. And I appreciate it very, very, very much. And if I had notes, I'd do this thing all in an order and do it real good. But here's going to go. Number one, I appreciate my family coming over here. Stand up, all of you. Got any family here? Stand up, all of you. They're busy people. They're busy people, and I appreciate them. You've talked about Karen a little bit. I call Karen the hostess with the mostest. And I sincerely mean that. I tell football class, Coach makes us teach football class 2 days a semester. You know what the biggest thing I teach football class? If you're going to coach football and you're going to get married, you better be sure you get a wife that can take you getting home at 8 o'clock or 10 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning. I know a lot of coaches that have gotten out of the profession because they went home to see their wife and their wife couldn't take it when they get in. Mine was not like that. I owe a lot to all the coaches who coached for me. Stand up, please. Everybody's been giving me all this credit all day, and these guys have heard it. This is not the first time they've heard that. They're the reason we had success, them and the players. I thought, in my egotistical way, when I was at Pittsburgh High School, that we had the best staff
year in and year out in the state of Kansas. We played some good people. The league is broken up now. They talk about the Southeast Kansas League. The league is broken up now because Pittsburgh High School dominated that league so much. The people that we couldn't beat when we took over the job didn't want to play us anymore. You people that are Pittsburgh High graduates know exactly what I'm talking about. And that's exactly what happened. It was starting to break up when I left. Merle came along and he beat them. They broke it up. Tom Nicholson came along after him, and he finished breaking it up, I think. Merle, is that not correct? And Josh Latimer, they don't want to play him now because they're playing Pittsburgh High, and that's why the league is in the turmoil that it's in. It started with the Dennis Watsons of the world, the Mike Darlingtons of the world, Gary Wilsons of the world, the Tim Burns of the world, the Ben Bernards of the world, and I know I'm leaving somebody out, but you know what I'm getting at. And I'm proud of that, but it makes it difficult today. I owe a lot. Coach Broyles was here. Coach Broyles, where you at? Wave at me. Coach Broyles here. When I retired from Pittsburgh High School, I had no idea. The thought wasn't even in my mind that I would be coming to Pittsburgh State. I'm not a handy guy. I can't drive a nail. I can't saw a board, and I'm real proud of that. It's kept me from having to get a job. Coach Broyles came out to see me one day, and he'll know this is exactly the truth. He said, "What are you going to do, Larry?" And I said, "I don't know, Coach." He said, "Well, I got a tight end job." We lived at 1006 Twin Lakes Drive at the time. He said, "Why don't you just come out your back door and coach tight ends?" Coach, you remember that, don't you? That was a real tough interview. Real tough interview. I owe a lot to Coach Broyles. I owe a lot to Tim Beck. And Coach Wright, you and your coaches. Coach Wright, you here? Stand up, all those Pittsburgh State guys. Stand up. I'm going to tell you something. It was great to work for Coach Broyles. It was great to work for Coach Beck. And it's great to work for Coach Wright and all those guys, and they're great coaches. And it won't be long till Coach Wright will be winning national championship. That's what they're after. That's what we're after. So I've been fortunate. I had a big, high-powered speech that I thought I wanted to give. When you got Drew Rhodes and Mark Bollinger and Matt McLeod giving the talk, they've already said all of it. So there's not really much more I could say, but it is amazing that the people that have come out of the Pittsburgh High program and go on and do the things that they have done. I can't tell you how many medical doctors we've got in the room today, doctors and dentists and lawyers and all kinds of professional people, college professors, college coaches that we had the honor of dealing with when we were at Pittsburgh High School. We didn't win a state championship every time. Maybe the best team we ever played was in 1970. Dodge City beat us 22-3. They might have been the best team we ever played. We were pretty good. You know, when you got guys like we had on that team, you can be pretty good. It's hard to screw them up. I'm not sure that the best team we ever had, the first year was playoffs in Kansas in 1969. I wanted to get into playoffs real bad the first year. We were 8-1. We got beat. I was talking to Dale Askins. We got beat over Parsons 26-23. They ran a kickoff back and beat us 26-23. We had a really, 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 really good football team in 1969. They only took 4 teams to the playoffs that year. Ark City, Bishop Carroll, I forget the other 2. They were pretty good. I drove to Ark City, Kansas. Martin Rhodey was the athletic director. And I drove to Ark City, Kansas on that first playoff. 4 teams were going to have to play 2 games. I drove to Ark City, Kansas to see what it was like a playoff game. I'd never been to a playoff game. I didn't know anything about it. I drove to Ark City, Kansas to see it. The next year we go to the playoffs. We're one of those 4. You 1970 guys know that. Everybody's patted the 70 guys on the back a lot today, and they're deserving. They were very good. We go to Topeka West to play Topeka West. I'll tell you a brief story, but it was 100% true. Martin Rhodey was the athletic director. We were 8 wins and a tie. Coffeyville tied us 7-7 in 1970 at Coffeyville. I tell these guys, Coach Wright and all these guys now, how good Coffeyville and Fort Scott and those teams used to be. And they all kind of look at me like, oh, you know, he's getting kind of old. He doesn't know what he's talking about. I know what I'm talking about. They were damn good. If you don't think so, ask Jim Goebel, who played 4 years at the University of Missouri. Ask Rex Garner, who started 6 games as a true freshman at SMU. Ask those guys that went on and played. They were good. We go to Joplin Parkwood, and everybody thought Parkwood was unbelievable. The week after we got tied 7-7 by Coffeyville, we go down there and beat Parkwood 34-15. We go to Topeka West. Martin Rhodey was our athletic director, and the WIBW, if you people are familiar with Kansas radio and TV stations, they come to Pittsburgh and stay 2 days. Now, we didn't have many TV stations running around watching our practice back in those days. WIBW stays 2 days. I forget the guy's name. But if he asked me once, he asked me 10 times, Larry, do you realize how good Topeka West is? I said, yeah, I've seen the film. They're good. Do you realize how really good they are? Yeah, I've seen the film. They're really good. We go up there and win 37-0. Tommy's already told you this, but I'm going to tell you again. That was the win that put Pittsburgh High football on the map. Tommy, you realize that. That was the win that put Pittsburgh High football on the map. I'm not a big stat guy. I'm going to give you a statistic that I didn't know until I retired, and probably very few of you have heard it. From 1969, when playoffs started, till 1998, when I retired, that's 29 years. Of those 29 years, Pittsburgh High School was in the playoffs 21 years. At that time, it was a state record. Now, records are made to be broken, and I know that there are teams that have been in the playoffs more than 21 times. But of the first 29 playoff years, we were in the playoffs 21. I didn't even know that till the guy told me that, called me after I'd retired. I was proud of that. We had a lot of really, really, really good players. I've already told you what kind of really, really, really good people they are. And they talked about the 1988 team, me telling them they weren't very tough and not very good athletes and things like that. We had a guy named Brian Hutchins on there. It wasn't bad. We were just getting into inside veer stuff. You football people will know about this. Brian Hutchins did it so well. And Buddy Rasnick was the fullback. He ran the pass so good, it was like cheating. Matt McLeod had 200 yards in the 5A state championship game against Goddard that night. If Matt would have had great speed, now he'll tell you he had great speed. He didn't have great speed. Brian Hudson's back there laughing. He knows exactly what I'm talking about. He made some runs, but they'd catch him once in a while. If they hadn't caught him, he'd still be running, you know. So it was amazing. We did some good things. Those guys were good football players. We lost the third game of the year to Springfield Parkview, and then they got pretty doggone good. And it was good. We had lots of good players. And we had really, 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 really good coaches. And I will say this. I don't know what makes a good head coach. I know what it does. It's assistant coaches, and you got to let them coach. Dennis Watson, best offensive line coach in high school football ever. Now, I'm going to tell you something about Dennis that he didn't tell you a while ago when he was up here doing his thing. He was a student teacher of mine, and I don't want any of these high-level educators thinking bad about me, but I was real good with student teachers. I had one every year in the spring and in the fall. And here was my coaching point to student teachers. Follow me around for 1 week. They had to be in class, 14 weeks or whatever it was. I don't know how long it was. Long enough through football season, I know that. Follow me around for 1 week, then get here at 7:30, quarter late. I'll give you my keys, and you keep the fights down in class. I'm going to watch film. Gary Wilson's in here. Coach Willie, where you at? Wasn't that the coaching point with student teachers? Keep the fights down. I'll be back about 2 o'clock, get my keys. So that was good. But that's how good Dennis Watson was. And it was real difficult, him getting the job. He doesn't even know this, so I'm going to tell you this. Earl Bevan was the superintendent of schools. This was back in the day when you didn't have to have a curriculum council every time you wanted to do something. Mr. Bevan came to me one day and said, Larry, could you use another coach? How many of you guys that are coaching here or that are in coaching have had superintendents come to you and say, could you use another coach? I had it once from Earl Bevan. I said, yes, we could use another coach. We weren't winning very much and all that kind of stuff. And he said, well, can he teach social science? And I said, yes, he can teach social science. He said, well, you get in touch with him, send him to see me, and we'll see if we can get him hired. I was jealous of Dennis Watson because they hired him before he ever taught a day of school. He started teaching driver education, and he stayed with me for 31 years. Now, go back and do your research and all those kinds of things. That ain't bad. That ain't bad. So you want to know why we won? 2 reasons. We had good players and good coaches. And a lot of good players are sitting out here right now. I wanted to give you just a brief history, and I want you 1965 guys, 66 guys, and 67 guys. Get your thinking cap on, Danny Barillo, because this involves you a little bit. There's one of the doctors I was talking about that we've had here. All of you know Danny. Great guy. When we took the job in 1965, the guy that we succeeded had won 6 games in 4 years. I don't know, Josh Latimer's gone. Now he had to go get a wrestling match lined up. But that wouldn't go over real well right now at Pittsburgh High School if you won 6 games in 4 years. It wouldn't have gone over very well when I left there a long time ago, Merle. I don't think that'd last real good. Do you? No. I think the expectation is a little higher. But anyway, we had won six games in 4 years. I was young and dumb and was dumb enough to think that we could win. So we went to work and we got players interested. Tommy did a great job of analyzing because he was around here and all that. But the 65 guys, I have a soft spot in my heart for them because there were some really good players on that team. They had all played sophomore football for me. Tommy told you I was a sophomore coach for 2 years before I got to go to varsity. Those guys had played for me as sophomores, and they kind of knew me, and I kind of knew them a little bit. And we won. We were 5-2-2, and that was really good. We lost to Coffeyville, and we lost to Fort Scott. Those are the two best teams in the league. We weren't even on the same planet with them. I learned the Fort Scott fight song for my first loss at Fort Scott up there, the 5th game of the year. And I tell Karen will vouch for this. She's forgotten it, but I remembered it. I learned the Fort Scott fight song that night, and it didn't take me long to figure out I didn't like it very well. It was one of those 33-13 jobs. Took us 4 years to beat Fort Scott. 68 months was the first month to beat them. 65, 66, and 67 we lost to them. Beat them in 68, started beating them, kind of started winning some games with them. The Coffeyville team, it took us 5 tries. We won that one on the 5th try. When Coffeyville got off the bus, in those days, in football, basketball, baseball, and track, they knew they were going to beat you. They had better players and better coaches than any of us. Merle, you played against them. You know exactly what I'm talking about. They had better players and better coaches than any of us. In 1967, my 3rd year at Pittsburgh High School, we finished with 27 kids, grades 10, 11, and 12. 5 seniors, and I'm going to name those 5 seniors. I think of them often. I know some of them are here. I don't know that all of them are here. Merle Clark was a sophomore in high school in 1967 football season. J.L. Regan was a sophomore in high school. Kirk Colder was a sophomore in high school. Bill Moore was a sophomore in high school. And Jim Utley was a sophomore in high school. That was 5 sophomores, or 5 seniors, excuse me. And it was tough. We had 27 kids out for football in a school the size of Pittsburgh High School. That wouldn't work very well today either. But I was young and dumb, stupid enough to think that we could win, and I drove them hard. And Rhonda said it wasn't any fun. Guess what? It wasn't. We practiced hard. We had contact every day, all those kinds of things. The 68 bunch comes along and starts winning again. The 69 team was really good, and the 70 team put us on the map. And the rest of it is history. It's been a great thing. Karen and I and our family have been very lucky to be at Pittsburgh all these years. Coach Broyles hired me. Coach Beck kept me on. Coach Wright kept me on. And I have a great situation at Pittsburgh State, and those guys are doing wonderful things. They're doing wonderful things. This is a little off of what I wanted to tell you, but they're both here, so I'm going to tell it to you. I don't want to embarrass them. I want to brag on them. The 2 best phys ed students I ever had. Tommy knows who one of them is, and Charlie Myers. Where you at, Charlie? 2 best phys ed students I ever had. I'm telling you, I ran phys ed class like I tried to run football. It was tough, wasn't it, Tom? It was tough. Tommy Van Hoy would dive up in the 3rd row of seats in a basketball game to get a frickin' loose ball. And I'm not kidding. I've seen him do it. So it was amazing. But if I were a student back in those days and I wanted to win the flag football game, the interclass track meets we had, the wrestling tournaments we had, whatever we had, volleyball, whatever we were doing, I would want Tom Van Hoy and Charlie Myers on my team because they were going to win. And I tell them that every time I see them. Charlie's shaking his head and he knows I'm right. He knows I'm right. Hey, I want to thank all of you for coming today. It's been a great thing. I haven't seen David Weigel. Dave Weigel, where you at, bud? I haven't seen Dave Weigel since he graduated from high school. Lives in California, was a big-time business executive out there, and was a great player for our 1971 team, Dave. 71 was a left tackle on the 71 team. And I got to see Dave today and a lot of other people. And I really appreciate you coming. You've made an old man happy today. Thanks a lot. God bless. Travel safe. Thank you.
Coach, I was afraid if I didn't play hard, I'd never get back in the game. All right. Well done. After 33 years as head coach of Pittsburgh High, the next 24 came as assistant for Pitt State. Man, look at this place. The epitome of success. The winning continued not only at Pittsburgh High, but at Pittsburgh State. This year, Coach Wright and his team, 12-1. They lost that tough game at Ferris State, 17-14, got down 14-0, got the interception return for a touchdown, had a 75-play drive, got it tied at 14, and lost one with 9:26 to go in the fourth quarter on that field goal. The biggest thing from that day, November 26th, it was 53 degrees in Big Rapids, Michigan. All the years with Pitt State broadcasting those games, we went to Fargo, we went to Grand Forks. It's like 40 degrees below zero. So Coach Wright's continued on there. That same day, I'm with the Furman University football and basketball now, and we had a game that day, talking about Furman. They're taking on Elon, and we're following. I got all these guys out in South Carolina now that are following the Pitt State Gorillas, and we're following the game, going along, and they're playing Elon, and this guy comes up to me from Elon, and he says, "Hey, do you know the last time that Elon won a postseason football game?" I said, "Yeah, 1981. He goes, "How in the hell do you know that?" I said, "I broadcast that game." And he looks at me going, "Really?" I go, "Yeah, what do you want to know?" 3-0, it was frozen, we missed 4 field goals. And so we're getting some South Carolina Pitt State football fans. Coached 24 years and continuing. I spent 20 years as a play-by-play broadcaster for Pitt State, 77 through 81. Came back 1990 through 2004. I broadcast 223 games, 5 national championships in 81, 91, 92, 95, 2004. Don't take it for granted. We thought we were going to roll right into the playoffs. Beat Jacksonville State 23-6 in Florence, Alabama. It is hard to win a championship. That was the first national championship game, and you can look over there, championship, since 1961. That year, Pitt State beat Linfield, Oregon, 12-7 in Sacramento, California. That was the Camellia Bowl. How good was Pitt State? How about 7 shutouts, the first 5 games of the year. They scored 321 points. They gave up 46. You're going to win a lot of games. Some are here that will remember this. And I watched that game on television that day. And it was in black and white. I think we had color TV came in 1954, and I think we got it in 1971 here in Pittsburgh. 30 years later, I broadcast that national championship game in 1991, and that's pretty neat for a guy that's from Pittsburgh, Kansas. And all during that time, Pitt State, and it's a remarkable number because you look around the country, in very few places you can say this. I ended up broadcasting 30 playoff games for Pittsburgh State during that time frame. Now, this is where it gets tricky. So I'll go back with some of the guys that are in here, some of the people that are in here. But did you know that Pitt State played in 2 bowl games? 1978, the Boot Hill Bowl in Dodge City took on Peru State, 143-14. Peru came out in the swinging gate. They had a bad snap. Pitt State recovered to the 14-yard line. 2 plays later, 7-0. The route was on. The next year, the Mogula Shrine Bowl game, we were up in St. Joe. Need I tell you, the officiating was so bad that Ron Ranneman almost took his team off the field that day. We got beat 17-14. From 1990 to 2004, Pitt State went 154-29-2 And I was fortunate to broadcast, all as I mentioned, but the one game in 1990, the state championship, and I did it. Lynn Meredith is here. He and I worked together. He was Tony Romo. Before Tony Romo, he'd sit there and go, pitch it. They're going to do this, do that. So I was fortunate to work with Lynn as well. I was also very fortunate to be able to do 20 years because 8 of those years, I lived in 2 different cities. I lived in Topeka and I lived in Wichita. My wife, Janine, was working on her television career at that point. 179 miles I commuted one way. I'm a member of the Million Mile Driving Club over the years. And our relationship is such that one Christmas she gave me a fire extinguisher because the car was going to blow up at some particular point in time. So I wanted to say thanks to Lance Sigler. I know he's not here today, but he was the general manager of KKLW. He allowed me to do that, to have the opportunity to broadcast Pittsburgh High and Pitt State, and very few people in this country would allow me to do this. 1990, Pitt State lost the national semifinals at North Dakota State, and a lot of people in here will remember that. 39-29, one of the great games of all time. 4 players in that game, Ronald West, Ronald Moore. 2 of them for Pitt State ended up in the National Football League. The 56-game winning streak ended Game 2 at Texas A&M Commerce 2013. Brian Hutchins, I hope that collarbone's okay. He broke it at that particular point in time in that game. And Brian and I go back because I broadcast every single game that Brian played at Pittsburgh High and at Pittsburgh State. The Gorillas would come back. They beat SBU the next week to 23-17. And then some will remember that 6-6 tie against Rolla. That was a game where Ivan Listerud, a guy for Rolla, the percentage all-time leader in field goals, missed one. So at that point in time, as you look over there in 1991, nobody thought that Pitt State was going to win a national championship. Beat Northwest Missouri 38-0 the next week. This was before Northwest was Northwest and began winning some games themselves along the way. But then beat Commerce at home, got them again that time. And then we went out to Portland State, won that game, and beat Jacksonville State for the championship. In 92, beat North Dakota State 38-37, one of the great games of all time ever played here. The stand was bad. Jerry Boone makes that tackle. Arden Beachy was the quarterback. They had the ball, and they were going to go for 2 and win it. Face mask got it down to 1.5-yard line, runs the counter option, pitches his outside, and he didn't get in. One of the great games of all time. But what people forget is that Jeff Wood kicked a 39-yard field goal with 2 seconds to go to even provide that opportunity. 93, we opened the Fargo Dome. First game ever played in the Fargo Dome, came up a little bit shy there. 95, we go out to Texas A&M Kingsville, and in the semifinals and won 28-25. In overtime, allowed opportunity to play for the championship then. The final game that I broadcast was in 2004, and that was a championship game against Valdosta State and came up shy 36-31. You might recall Jermaine Race got out of that game at the first quarter. Pittsburgh got up 14-0 at that point. 2,216 rush and 26 touchdowns on the year for Jermaine. That was the year that Pitt State, all levels now, set the record for scoring, 55.8, 598.4 yards in total offense and 347 rush. Scored 91 points against Rolla, won 91-27 and 70 4 other times. They were not good games to broadcast, but you ended up winning them so well. It was a very great year for the Pitt State Gorillas. It has been a remarkable run for Pitt State in the last 37 years. Since 1985, beginning with Dennis Francione, 53-6, 5 conference championships, and 5 national playoffs. He set the tone. Coach Broyles carried it on, Tim Beck, and now Coach Wright for Pittsburgh State. The last 19 years I've been out in South Carolina. I've had the opportunity to do a lot of different things in broadcasting out that way on radio and television with a number of different organizations. And you can't believe the reach of Pittsburgh State University. It goes more than 60 miles. I moved out there in 2004, and I had to look for a job first time in about 20 years, and I'm knocking on doors. I can't find anything. And finally, I get hired by WCCP Radio, which is in Clemson, South Carolina, and they're the flagship station for Clemson University. And they asked me, they said, can you do 4 high school coaches shows? I said, well, background's in Pittsburgh, Kansas. We did 26 high school football coaches a week. I said, yeah, I think I can handle 4. 2 of those coaches at the end said, hey, what's your background? I said, Pittsburgh, Kansas. And they go, really? Gorillas? Cool mascot? Double tight, split back veer? I said, yeah. How do you guys know that? Oh, man, we saw him play Portland State. We knew all of this kind of stuff. So one day a TV station calls me and they say, can you go down to Clinton, South Carolina, and interview the Presbyterian head football coach? I go, yeah, I'd be glad to go down there and do it for you. I interview him, and then after it's over, he goes, what's your background? I said, I'm from Pittsburgh, Kansas. Pittsburgh State? He goes, hey, pretty cool. Cool mascot you guys have down there. He said, I played in the 1987 second round of NAIA playoff game. And he goes, I said, well, I was there. And he goes, really? I said, no, shoot, and he knew double tight split back veer. All right. So the next week I'm standing on a field doing a high school game, and this big guy comes up and follows me. He says, are you that little guy from Kansas? I said, well, I'm from Kansas, so figure it out. He said, I was the center on that team. And so they knew all about that. I did a Division II TV game one day. Lenore Ryan was playing. And this guy comes up to me, the head coach, after I'd interviewed him. He said, what's your background? I said, Pittsburgh, Kansas. He goes, Pitt State Gorillas, split back, veer, double tight? I said, yeah, absolutely. And he's an older looking gentleman. I think, well, okay, he knows football. And he says, he was in Portland in 91 and 92, and he was watching those games. And he said, do you know anything about those games? And I said, yeah, I broadcast those games. And he goes, no kidding? He goes, they knew all about the Pitt State Gorillas. And I can go on and on. I won't bore you to death. But what I wanted to get across was at all levels of what I've been able to do in South Carolina, from the ACC to the SEC and everywhere else, from high school on down, they know about Pittsburgh State University and the great success that you all have had here in football. So I became known as the little guy from Kansas, the gorilla guy, the Kansas guy from Pittsburgh. And I'll finish with this. I'm doing baseball one day, and I'm one of the broadcasters of the Greenville Drive. They're the affiliate of the Boston Red Sox, and they play in a replica of Fenway Park, which is a really cool place to go to work all the time. I walk in, and this guy goes, I walked into the broadcast booth, and my partner goes, hey, are you the Give 'em 6 guy? I said, what are you talking about? He said, there was a guy that came in here a minute ago and said he wanted to see if that Give 'em 6 guy was here. I said, well, yeah. I said, I used to broadcast in Kansas, and I said, Pittsburgh High, Pittsburgh State, they scored a lot of points, and at some point, I said, give 'em 6. I walked back outside, and there's a bunch of guys standing there in the area, Big Ten guys, all SEC guys, ACC guys, and there's this guy that says, hey, man, give 'em 6. And it was Zach Fisher. Dan Wilkes is here, who was an intern here at Pittsburgh State, and it came full circle, and all these guys are up there going, oh, you mean, oh, Gorillas? Cool mascot. Double tie split back veer? So they know about Pittsburgh State, not only here, but also across the country. It's pretty cool. And for me to have that opportunity, I'm one of the most fortunate broadcasters in the country to be able to do it. All right, we've been here a long time. We need to wrap it up. Coach's first year was 1965. Coach sons of former players, multiple family members. How about the Meyer brothers? His first football handoff to all players. Any of you guys got this? This is what Coach Garman gave to his players, and it's how you're supposed to behave, how you're supposed to act, how you are supposed to represent your school and your community. I think it was mimeograph, Coach, and you might have run out of toner, I don't know. It outlines the actions of champions. There were 7 principles of motivation: desire, faith, imagination, organization, decision-making, willpower, and my favorite, the utilization of the subconscious mind, which I'm still working on to this day. Players also learn patience, persistence, guidance, understanding, strength, and courage. Coach Garman will tell you that he has been fortunate over the years. Well, so have I. to be a part of this with you. The author Thomas Wolfe once wrote, "You can't go home." I think we proved him wrong today, as many of us came back to honor Coach Garman for his accomplishments and achievements over 60 years with Pittsburgh High and Pittsburgh State. Coach, congratulations. Go Dragons, go Gorillas.